Hi, everybody. Hola, and welcome back to another edition of the Web of Wyrd podcast with myself, your host, Davyd Farrell, and my co-host, Pete Jackson Main. Hi, brother. How you doing?
Hey, bro. I'm good, as usual. Although, if you'd asked me a couple of days ago, I might have said something very different and a lot less broadcastable. So, yeah, it's been an interesting week. I think you and I were chatting just before, and we're both having very similar experiences, and we're kind of trying to make sense of why that happened, and hopefully we can talk that through today as well. But it's been a roller coaster for sure. But it was interesting because today, of course, as you'll mention, is a very important day. And yeah, I've really felt that energy coming in, and I've actually been able, by an effort of will, to put myself into that kind of higher vibrational space. I kind of felt it coming. I felt, no, I'm not messing around with all this dark stuff anymore. I'm just gonna go with 5D.
Okay, good, bro. Well, this is, I think, going to be one of the major themes of today's talk, because today is the Lionsgate portal, the 8/8. And we're doing today's podcast to put out hopefully what will be a positive vibration, because actually, yes, one of the things we're going to talk about today has been the challenges of the last week. And speaking to yourself and other of my healer light working friends, it seems that many of us have had a challenging week and have been somewhat targeted, I think, as light workers, in an attempt to pull us down or maybe even onto an alternative timeline. And that's going to be a big piece today, as well as about time and about our good old friend Dandelion, the Dandelion, who is very, very much connected to the energies of today. And of course, we've been doing the immersion over the last couple of weeks and showing a few bits and pieces from that. And hopefully we'll get into that a little bit later too. So today is a very important day, and really want to explore the energies of today, but also from the sort of perspective of the heart, from the royal noble leonine heart, which is also very solar, very yang, very masculine energy, which is also something that I think we want to touch on too, because we've hinted at it in previous podcasts about the emasculation of the divine masculine, and the sort of effect that's had on the balance of everything, and the need now to restore both divine masculine and divine feminine to a place of equality and balance, so that we can step into our newer future. Because if either of those are out of balance, then we've got a problem. So those are the themes for today, bro. But where would you like to start? What's been catching your eye in the news this week?
Well, I think we have to start with the Conservative Party leadership challenge.
Right.
And talking about divine masculine and ready for Rishi. How much of a divine masculine role model do you think Rishi Sunak is? But then by the same token, it looks like Liz, can you trust her, is coming up fast on the inside, so to speak. And I have a similar feeling about her with regard to the divine feminine as well. How much further away could we get with anybody? And I think that we also sort of talked about this question of leadership in general, and I think you and I have a very different notion of what that might mean, but this is a leadership challenge that we cannot influence unless we happen to be members of the Conservative Party, and yet we're going to be affected by it to the extent that we allow them to, actually, is what I think, because I think we're going to be talking about some timeline stuff as well. And when I see those people, one of the things I think is, I really don't want to be on that timeline anymore. I mean, I've had, I've had my dalliance with politics over the years in one way or another, and frequently I kind of turn my back on it, say, right, never again, and then I get lured back. And two of my favorite maxims on this are, and I've sort of deployed them from time to time over the years. One is, don't vote, it only encourages them. Which sounds a terrible thing to say when, everybody will say, well, we people lost their lives in getting you the vote, and now you're turning away from it. So it does sound terribly irresponsible, but I don't care, because it's, if you do vote and, given what the choice of things to vote for is, I think you're just supporting the game. And the other maxim really says just that. It's don't, whoever you vote, the government still gets in. And that's even more when you look at what the choice is in this two-party system, then you feel, well, actually, really, where can we actually rely on decent leadership, and who's going to get us out of the terrible thing? Because another thing we're going to be, the situation we're in at the moment, where not content with jacking up energy prices to double or more what they were, they're now proposing to withdraw water from us, which they're making the excuse that it's a drought caused by hot weather. But I think we're going to get into that as well. So yeah, the leadership challenge and how ridiculous, and it gets more ridiculous. Sunak is coming in like Robin Hood, only sort of inverted. Telling us all he's going to take money away from the poor and give it to the rich, and he's going to fix an economy which he wrecked in the first place. Truss just doesn't have a clue.
You're killing me, bro. Yeah, go on, carry on, man.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about Ms. Truss. I just think she doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a clue. None of them have a clue. And we said it before, the country somehow keeps running, and I don't know how. I see a lot of stuff about, why don't we just, is this isn't good enough? How are we going to stand up to the energy companies, for example? And there's a strategy which is being outlined for that, actually, which is quite interesting, which is you cancel the direct debit, and you send them a complaint in, and then you say, right, I'm going to pay you for whatever I use. So you do a calculation every month, and you say, right, here's your fuel price, your energy price for the month. But they can't actually, while you've got a complaint in, until it's been resolved, they can't demand anything from you. Oh, wow. So if you've got a live complaint going, it's a way of just sort of keeping them on the back burner, so to speak, without actually having to pay them anything. But you mustn't actually just stop paying them, because if you do that, then it'll wreck your credit rating, all blah, 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 all of that stuff. I think it's something that interests me greatly. But again, I kind of find myself thinking, is this just simply supporting the timeline where these things are happening? Because it seems to me that if you believe in, let's call it what it is, magic, and if you have the right idea about magic, and if you live in a magical way, then your life will work out and you will get what you need. Okay. So there is a little bit of stuff going on around that perhaps you have to put in place on a very practical level. For example, we have a big, I think it's 5 boxes now stashed away in our outhouse, which we call the end of the world stash. Which is
there's some good stuff in there, bro.
Yeah, we have a solar panel now. I bought a solar panel which charges up a solar generator, and there's plenty of that around at the moment. You know what I mean? So, so there's all of that going on. But in other ways, I think one has to say, almost trust the creative power of your own life to say, I'm going to be provided for, but you cannot do that if you're plugged into a timeline which is, they are taking this away from us, they are pricing me out of the market, they are taking away my energy and my life source, if you like. They can't do that. But when you plug into your own life source, it seems to me you get past all of that, and that's the route that I prefer to go down.
Wow, great intro, bro, and so many things I want to look back to, but I love what you just said there at the end as well, because I think that is the major point that we want to share today, really, is that idea of, like, you create your reality. And even if it seems like, with the things you've just talked about, that somebody else is creating and you're having to abide by those rules, it's only because you're acquiescing to that. And what I love what you just shared there about people playing the game back, which is, okay, we're going to keep putting complaints through so we don't have to pay. And meanwhile, you're going to still have to give us the service, which is kind of, in some ways, it's a sort of a magic, really. Just to emphasize to our audience that magic is something that happens all the time. It's not something that just happens in a Harry Potter movie, or when you see David Copperfield maybe on the telly or whatever. There are those other types of magic, but magic is really just the power to have an idea, give it energy, and send it into the 3D. So there's really three simple steps. You summon something to your mind that you want, you give it an energy, like you should give it joy or happiness or love, and then you send it to a destination. In the bad ways, that can be sent with negative ideas to people, but you can actually use the same methodology on yourself all the time. And when you work with the new moons especially, or big astrological conjunctions, or a day like today, which is really a portal to connect to the Sirius star system and the lion beings and that lion heart and all of that, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But we can use these days to basically invite in that magic into our life so that we don't have to live under fake leaderships with I mean, I think that this when we talk about leadership, what really strikes me is the slogans that the two major campaigners came up with: Liz for leader and ready for Rishi. And these guys were super pleased with themselves. They spent hours on this, apparently, especially Rishi's crew. I mean, in all honesty, it feels like a sort of a Friday afternoon down the pub on the back of a beer mat job to me. But I think it's a mark of of where we're at. We've got these very sort of, how to say, I don't know, self-congratulatory people who really do believe their own hype, do believe that the country should be ready for Rishi, or that, that Liz should be the leader. And as you pointed out, we live in a two-party system, but actually we don't really. We live in a one-party system and have done for a while, but with the illusion that there was another party. So and again, why do only several 100,000 Conservative Party members get to choose who runs the country? I mean, is that democracy? It doesn't sound like it to me, in the way that I was taught as a politics student, or indeed, I think even just as a basic human being, we understand that we have a vote which is really meant to decide who runs the country, and yet somehow we don't have that vote, many of us. It seems only a small number of people do, if they've been supporting the Tory, the Tory coffers over the years. And so now we're going to have to sit back and let these people decide who leads us. And again, I want to just draw back to something you said about the vote, because that's, again, I didn't actually vote in the last few elections, because I thought, you know what, if I give the vote for exactly the reason you said, then I'm actually condoning these people. And there's not one single person on the ticket that I got, in the last general election. I'm not giving my vote to you. I don't like you or trust any of you. So why am I going to give you my vote? And I think that we also got sold a little bit of a woke motif in there, that people died for your vote, so you must vote. It's like, well, what happens if the people that are up on the ticket are actually just not trustworthy beings? I still give them my vote because somebody apparently died for that. So I feel like that this whole illusion around democracy needs to go now, because we haven't lived under democracy for a long time. And actually, I've mentioned this before too. A lot of stuff has been coming to me about the time frame about 400 or 500 years ago, which is also roughly when Henry VIII kicked out the Roman Catholic Church from Britain. And according to many sources I've read, it's ushered in a period of about 100 years with his daughter, where the so-called forces of the Cabal weren't actually present in the hallowed lands of the British Isles. And then, of course, we have the Civil War to get rid of the monarchy, which gets rid of the monarchy and then brings it back almost immediately afterwards. So one has to wonder about the credibility of that whole process, and the creation of our parliament, but still with a monarch sat over that with the power of veto, which apparently has never been used in public. But of course, we have no idea really what goes on behind the scenes, and just how much control the monarchy is said to have had over our democracy for the last 400 years. And that doesn't even begin to bring in the piece about what happened to the common law of the land being replaced by the maritime law. So as I understand it, the last 400 years since that period, we haven't had a single legal law passed in Britain, or had a single legal government, or a single legal monarch, because actually everything that's happened has been under maritime law, which is only applicable at sea.
So I understand. Wow. I've kind of talked to you about this kind of thing before. I feel ill-equipped to comment much on that. I know very, very little about the whole difference between common law and maritime law. I know they're very, very different things, and I'm aware that there is this perspective that nothing that we see as law in our land at the moment, and in many places in the world, and I know it's the same in America, is really legal as such. And how can it be? When you look at what these people are doing, when you look at how they are enabling the shift of wealth, huge wealth, from the pockets of ordinary people into the pockets of the usual suspects. And that's their whole program, the Tories. I mean, Rishi Sunak is an arch contributor to that agenda, and he's been doing it for quite a few years now. And he, of course, is one of the richest men in Britain, becomes married to one of the richest women in the world. And I do not know how they get away with it. I've said this before, but I look at it and I think, Jesus, this is just, you know, I hand it to you guys that you can do this in broad daylight. And yeah, you'll get a few people squealing, but the vast majority of people will just go about their business and not care, or not know how they can do anything about it, or they'll have a bit of a moan, but they won't actually do anything. So you get away with it. Is it a numbers game? Is it just like, well, you don't count because you're in a minority of people who don't agree with what we're doing? Or is it that they've hoodwinked everybody and hypnotized them? I think that's probably somewhere near the truth, especially with recent developments, shall we say, where people have been, shall we say, had their energy systems aligned with something. We can't go too far down that track without getting kicked off YouTube again, but you know, you know what I mean.
Yes. Well, this is the thing, right? You know, looking at this. I mean, on the one hand, I have to thank these characters, these players, for you know, helping us to see, some of us anyway, the utter facade of the illusion and how ridiculous it all is. And I'm really hoping that, you know, today is another one of these days, if we have powerful intentions, that we can invite you know, higher forces to assist us in the deconstruction of a political system that really hasn't served anybody other than the politicians and the fat cats for a long time. And I think that, you know, what's really funny is that both good old Liz and Rishi are hell-bent on destroying their own campaigns. It's like, you know, Rishi took a big blunderbuss gun to his own feet yesterday and let off both barrels when he said that, yes, I'm going to rob the poor and feed the rich. So inverting the great you know, national hero that is Robin Hood in Britain, and then getting caught out publicly. And then I can't remember what happened with Liz, but she also had some sort of blunder that was something like that. And I'm just like, yeah, it's like, you know, you're not even in power yet, and you're already promising that you're going to rob from the poor. You know, so I feel like this is an opportunity for the great British public to go, that's enough, actually. I feel like we've all had enough of this bullshit, and maybe it's time for something else. But what I also see on the other side of the pond over here is the great white hope that people are, and I use those words carefully, that people are getting behind to, you know, to think that someone is going to come and save us. That there is somebody out there who is designated by the angelic realms and the great spirit as being the savior that is going to come and basically save all of our asses. And I think that that's kind of the piece of the 5D transition or the ascension, is that that's not what we need and not what we're calling in, because we are the leaders, each and every one of us.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. You know, I think this idea of a savior is kind of very, very last epoch now. You know, even on a religious basis, you know, and the whole thing, I don't know whether you've looked into the whole kind of ascended master, kind of the return of the Christ and all of that, but the information that I have around that, so completely, I mean, we're bringing it onto another level now. I don't want to stay with Rishi and trust for very long, but it is, you know, what's coming in, the return of the Christ energy, if you like, or which we could say is the heart chakra, the 5D, and all of that. That's what's coming in, and it's coming into many people, not just one. There's not going to be one savior. If you know, anybody who stands up there and says, I am the savior, distrust him. Don't follow him or her. Don't follow them. Don't follow leaders. I did this on Facebook one day, and I got, you know, I got about 200 likes within about 10 seconds. It was like, I just said, don't follow leaders. And there's a big energy for that, actually. Why would we? Why would you follow a leader? How do you know what they're going to lead you into, or, you know, off the edge of a cliff, or into an inferno, or, you know, what?
A war in the Ukraine, maybe.
Sorry, what was that?
Or a war in the Ukraine or Taiwan.
Or well, exactly. You know, a conflagration of some kind. Yeah. And I think it's time we stop. We need to turn away from that, and we need to, you know, this is what this is all about, isn't it? As you said, our own sovereignty, our own authority, the authorship of our lives lies inside of us. We're doing it every day, every second of every day, every nanosecond of every day. We are creating ourselves and our lives and the circumstances that we see out there, so to speak, you know, the play, if you like, that's happening around us. We create it. And it's time we realize that. And that, I think, is the big message for me anyway. And I'm thinking, you know, the divine energy is in us all. It's just a matter of being able to see it and feel it and work with it. And it's not difficult. It's being made easier by the energies that are coming down into the planet at this time. I feel it very much so. So I think this is where we have to focus, actually. The lion heart.
Yes. Well, you know, this has been a lot of the energy of the Dandelion immersion that me and you have been involved in over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. And it is a big part of what I want to talk about in a few moments in relation to the energies of today and what we can work with, and being in that noble heart connects us to the 5D. But just before we get onto that, I just want to bring in another little piece, which I feel is also something that we want to illuminate more in the awareness, which is the impending drought that Britain is supposedly about to face. And I'm just going to say this, having lived in Britain a lot of my life, not all of it, but a fair portion, and having lived in Cymru in Wales for a good portion of that period, I can testify to the fact that Britain is a very wet place, and has been for as long as I've walked on this earth in this lifetime. So when we have 5 days of 30-degree heat, or whatever it seems to be, maybe 2 weeks if we're stretching the point, and suddenly we're being told that we're in drought. And if you see somebody flouting the rules of the hosepipe bans, then you have to snitch on them. So a couple of things here I want to concentrate on. How is a country like Britain ever really going to go into drought, or and why is this agenda being pushed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think there's, one has to be a little bit careful, because water shortages, if they occurred, would be catastrophic. We have a lot of people living on this island, and if they are starved of water, they die and they get ill, and all the rest of it. But you are right. It's probably one of the wettest places in the world. And it seems to me that we sort of oscillate between these poles, which are poles apart. Once, on the one hand, we're all drowning, literally, we're being flooded off the plains. And on the other hand, we're being burnt and seared off the plains, so to speak. So we're being treated to pictures of burnt grass. Well, as somebody, a gardener actually on television recently once said, well, grass is very resilient. It'll come back. It's not a problem. It withdraws its energy from its leaves, because that's how it conserves itself. And then when it's all over, it'll come back again as good as it was. Most plants will actually do that if they're well enough established. And we're also being treated to pictures of half full or even less than half full reservoirs. Well, the problem with pictures like that, and some years ago I did a degree in fine art, and I learned how to read imagery. And one of the things about imagery is you can convince almost anybody of anything if you put the right image in front of them, because we're mostly located in the visual modality. We see something and it means something, speaks to us in a way that language very often doesn't. So it's better than words. And if you put words and visuals together, you have a surefire way of really convincing people, or even hypnotizing them into a certain belief pattern. So what I want to say about the pictures that are being put in front of us, like the pictures of the fires and everything, is that, how many people have actually seen one of those fires? I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not saying it's not horrible if you're in it, but how many people have seen that reservoir? And how do we know that picture isn't an old one that was taken, many, many years ago, or even in another place? How do we know? We have no way of knowing that. How are we going to check that out for ourselves? Now, the hosepipe ban, it strikes me, is another version of the sort of coronavirus, let's shop people who are not doing it right. If you're not wearing a mask, if you're not isolating, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, let's shop. The whole thing about shop your neighbors, it's the Karen mentality, as we call it here. The Karens are out, watching to see whether you're washing your car or watering your lawn. And it's another example of that, we don't have to police you, we can leave you to do that for yourselves. And that again undermines the ways in which as a community, we might actually get together and say, hey, why don't we take control of this situation? Just down the road, there's a water company, and they're losing billions of gallons, or millions, I think, of gallons every day, because they're not fixing the pipework. Why are they not fixing the pipework? Well, could it be something to do with the fact that they're paying lots of dividends to their shareholders and bonuses to their bosses, but they're not actually investing in the infrastructure? And that is a big, big problem with capitalism and with, with that model of running public services. This is why I guess for many ways in my socialist past, I was always actually, let's put it all into public ownership, because that way we can still have some degree of control of it. The way it is at the moment, we can't. We would get prosecuted very quickly if we raided, if we walked into Anglian Water and said, right, we're taking over, because, they wouldn't let it happen. So there's so many dimensions to this. On the one hand, we have this scaremongering that is a routine tactic that comes through the media. Let's put an image in front that's going to scare the bejesus out of people, and they're going to be like, oh my God, another catastrophe on the horizon, a drought this time. And we've got monkeypox over there, and we've got Marburg on the horizon again, by the way, so that's coming up again. And all of these things that we're on the run from and protecting ourselves furiously from, and now we've got drought on top of it. So of course we're going to police other people, because we think they've got us believing that that the people who are watering their lawns are directly taking water out of our children's mouths. So I see it as another completely manufactured problem. Now the other thing, and that might sound terribly blasé, I've mentioned the leakage of water, which I think is criminal, but the other thing is that I happened on something this week, which I actually sent you a link to, about primary water, and the fact that underneath the surface of the earth, there is enough water to keep us all going for about, at least 200 million years or something like that. And if you think about it, in a closed system like a planet, water is never really lost. It just goes from one place to another. Do you know where most of this water actually is, this primary water? Very interesting. It's underneath the Sahara Desert. And apparently there's about 200 times more volume of water under the Sahara than there is on the surface of the entirety of Africa. And that's something to think about. And they're not telling you that. They're not telling you that actually water is not, even if you leave seawater out of it, drinkable water is not a rarity on this planet. It's just the way it's been managed, like so many other things.
Good point, bro. And I'm just going to lead with that for a second, because it is really interesting. And I also came across similar information some time back that suggested that basically within the closed circuit system that is a planet like Earth, is that there's always the same amount of water.
Yeah.
Because it's like, where does it go? It just evaporates off the planet into space? Exactly. Like, how does that work? And so the more I thought about that, then I started looking into it, and I kind of came across ideas such as like, well, the rain that comes down, in the skies onto the land of Wales goes into, seeps into the earth and into the mountains and into the aquifers. And then actually through a process of traveling through underground water channels could actually re-emerge as a spring in Peru.
Yeah.
And exactly. I'm just like, wow, that's an amazing thought, that the water that's coming out of my ground in the mountains of Wales might actually have come from maybe South America or like the Himalayas or somewhere else. And I'm, and then you sharing about the Sahara Desert, and that's like, wow, actually we've got the same issue here in Mexico in the Monterrey area, because good old, mega consumer Nestle, I think it has got to deal, extracting water out of the ground there. The whole place is completely bone dry, and they are actually in a drought, a real drought. If anyone's been to that part of Mexico, you'll see that it's very, very dry.
Just to interject there. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't want to lose this one. The CEO of Nestle a few years ago was being pilloried in social media for saying no human being has the right to water, because Nestle, of course, wanted to control it and sell it. So again, anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, good point. And I kind of think, there's the reason I'm focusing on this is it's some thoughts have come to me that's leading to an interesting point, which is that again, I love what you said about the presenting of the pictures, because this is a really important point, because I used to live near the Elan Valley in the centre of Wales, which is a series of 3 dammed lakes by the Victorians. Incredible piece of engineering, as the Victorians were often good at. And those lakes would be managed, because they were kind of on a, how to say, they were layered. So you'd let one, you'd open one dam and the water would flow down to the next one, and so on and so forth. So at any given point, any one of those 3 reservoirs that were all connected, it could be half empty, depending on whether they've just emptied it into the next one. So if you took a picture then, you could say, yeah, the reservoir's half empty. It's got nothing to do with drought or anything else, but they just emptied it. Right. So, what you're saying is perfectly true. And I'm going to focus on this point again in a minute in relation to something else to do with Dandelion and today and timelines. But I also just want to make the point that we had all this amazing infrastructure that was built mostly by the Victorians about 150 years ago. And the truth is, we've not really had an awful lot built since. And I feel like Britain is a country that has probably had at least, I would say, an increase of at least 30% of its population, if not a lot more, since the Victorian period. And yet we haven't had an increase in the level of infrastructure to support that. So we've got an island that is basically, supported by Victorian infrastructure, but was never designed to carry the capacity of people that now live on the island. And this is where I feel the real failings of the governments of the recent eras, certainly in my lifetime, have been is failing to address that and just kind of basically putting little plasters over everything, hoping that it'll just keep working and relying on the fact that the climate only ever stays in a sort of a rough approximation, that if it goes either a little bit too much this side, we get too much water and everything floods, or if it goes too much the other side, we have a drought. So we're always banking on this kind of very thin wedge in the middle. And it's seemingly at the moment we step outside of that with a storm or a little bit of wind that blows through the trees or something, then the whole country stops because there's leaves on the railway lines and we're on the verge of a drought. And it's like, for real, man, it's like, come on, I lived in the Middle East for like nearly a decade and we had temperatures that were always over 30 degrees, and somehow we all managed to survive without ever the thought that the world was about to end. And equally there are countries that get laden with snow every year, and then they still manage to get all of their public service transportation to work. And somehow in Britain we get a bit of a gust of wind and a few leaves blow around and half the rail network has to shut down. It's like it's not really a good endorsement of the leadership that we've had in Britain over the last period, because one tends to feel that, yes, this motif of robbing from the poor and giving to the rich has been going on a very long time, which is why we don't have the infrastructure, because it's not been invested in, because the taxpayers' money has been put to other valuable causes like a war in the Ukraine, for example, that we've been pumping billions into. I would like to suggest that maybe the money that was given to that whatever we want to call it, would have been better spent on actually upgrading the infrastructure in Britain and looking after the people here rather than sending weapons to another country.
Yes, completely. And
country either, which is actually Go on, bro.
Sorry, I think I lost you there. It's actually a no-brainer, isn't it? And this is where we actually do need really good leadership. We need leadership that is, and if it can't happen in Westminster or at central level, then it has to happen more locally. And that is where, that's my, one of the sort of components, if you like, of my New Earth vision is people actually consolidating in smaller communities and sorting themselves out on a manageable scale. Because I think the economies of scale are coming in here. And I think that one of the things that's wrong is everything that is centralized, it becomes totally out of reach. It becomes top heavy. If anything's wrong with it, nobody can do anything about it. It's enshrined in law, albeit maritime law, but the law that is sort of, making itself felt across the land at this time. But I think that the other thing I wanted to say about the weather is very much that the way I look at it, we all make the weather. The weather isn't just something external to us that happens whether we like it or not. We have a role to play in creating the weather. And this is a very sort of bizarre idea, but one I've come across in a few places. And I think it works extremely well. If you think that communities of people in particular places sometimes attract disasters to the place in order to shake things up. This is another perspective here. And I think we should be trusting ourselves a lot more and our inner natures a lot more about what's going on out there. The truth of the matter is we're all hugely enjoying this summer. It's wonderful. It is absolutely brilliant. We've had temperatures in the high 20s, if not low 30s, for nearly a month now. And it's gorgeous. Everybody's, well, not everybody, but most people are actually really enjoying it. They're out in their gardens, they're consorting with their friends and their families, they're cooking outside, they're really, really enjoying it in the way that you would when if you were to go on holiday to one of these places where it's like that all the time. And it strikes me as being just such a downer to have to look at these pictures and listen to all this rubbish about there being a drought. Of course there isn't a drought, We'll come the autumn, we'll probably be washed away, with the backlog of rain that's somewhere out there waiting to fall on us.
Right. And, again, this is an important point about the period that we've just been through. And I just want to bring a couple of pieces in here, actually. So what I think is interesting about the pictures piece that you shared is you can almost make anyone believe if you put the right caption and the right picture. I think it's a very important motif just to throw out to everybody about how we understand history in general.
Yeah.
And how much of the history that we're taught at schools or that we're given or that the standard archaeologists and historians like to repeat verbatim, and which of course anyone who studied things like ancient Egypt or Sumeria, any of the ancient civilizations, we can see really quite clearly these days that a lot of what we were given as the standard history is completely incorrect, or perhaps even worse, has been completely manipulated to make us believe something. The one that I'm sitting with a lot at the moment is the idea that we were convinced for a few hundred years that Columbus actually discovered America, which of course really is complete baloney, because it was always there and has been populated for hundreds of thousands of years. So how could we have just discovered it? But that was a very clever piece of, I guess we could say, imagery or timeline manipulation that was inserted to make everyone believe that, which then allowed all of the things that happened with the conquistadors and the new earth and the robbing of the new world back to the old world. And I feel that we're at a point when that has now come to an end, and that piece of timeline is unwinding itself. So I just want to bring that piece in just to make people sort of think about how many other pieces of history have we been presented with these fait accompli pictures, very much like the ones we've been given over the last couple of years, which tell us that millions of people have died from this, or hundreds of thousands of people are queuing to get into a hospital which are being overrun. And of course, we're not allowed to go down and see those things ourselves in person, because obviously that might, lead to the possibility that we see that that's not really going on. And then actually then that we don't believe the pictures that are being presented through the illusion box. So I just want to throw that idea out there, because we're at a time, and in my own experience with the Dandelion immersion, of understanding that, of course, the past is a still very present vibration that can be affecting us very powerfully in the present moment. And this is really a big piece that's come through from Dandelion over the last couple of weeks that I want to explore a little bit more in the last half of the show. But also just to conclude on the piece about the weather, it's like, why can't you enjoy 30-degree heat in Britain without being told that it's a drought? I mean, for Christ's sake, man, it's ludicrous, really. And I feel that this is, again, this kind of keep everybody in a fight or flight mentality. It's like, even when you're having a nice bit of, al fresco dining, which in Britain really is a luxury, right? I mean, the classic image of the man doing the barbecue is that he's out there in the pouring rain while all of the family is sat in the lounge looking through the window, like Daddy cooking the burgers in the pissing down rain, which is actually quite a classic British image, I think, from most summers of my childhood. So to enjoy the sunshine is a good thing, right? Get outside, it's like, let that skin feel the warmth of the sun, allow it into your eyes, all of that stuff, enjoy it, and don't allow yourself to be told that you're in the middle of a drought, and that probably by the end of next week the whole of the southeast is going to be like the Saharan desertified or something, which is probably the next line they'll try to give everybody. So don't believe the pictures. That's the point. I think we're trying to say there. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy life, and bring it back to yourself and bring it back to the present moment. And I think that with the energy of today, let's get into that. We put out a few pieces there to kind of set the scene about things that may be in our world that aren't really working for us anymore. And today, I believe, is a day that we can let go of things that don't serve us, but rather than focus on the things that aren't good for us, focus on the things that we want. Focus on the things that we want to call in. And because we are connecting to that royal, noble, leonine heart, which, as you so rightly said, really is the direct conduit to 5D consciousness, because that's unconditional love. And when we're in that place, as Dandelion is teaching us, and as the Leo energy is showing us, and today is really all about harnessing that energy for maximum manifestation. Today is a day that we can bring all of these threads together with our own personal magic and sovereignty and go, you know what? This is the new earth that I want. I don't want these idiot leaders playing out this game. I want something that's more grassroots, that's about joint decisions in a community where we all decide from a 5D perspective. What is it that we all want? Because when we make a decision from the fifth dimension, we can see everything. We don't get manipulated in the astral planes. We're above that level of consciousness. And the whole whole of the last 2 years has been a massive manipulation of the human emotional realm, particularly the lower astrals, the fourth dimension, because that's where we can get traumatized and triggered, and then we get forced to react into the 3D by these emotional triggers. And the powers that be know this very, very well. And of course, they've been working with the astrology on this. And so I feel today is a day that we go, enough. Today is a day that I declare myself a sovereign being heading on a new earth trajectory that requires a different kind of community with a different kind of leadership.
Amen.
Thank you, bro.
Oh God, yeah. Bring it on. I've just been thinking about this thing about timelines that we've been talking about as well. And I think, you know, so much of this is trying to drag us back to that old worn out timeline.
Yes.
And I kind of wonder when they just give up on it because nobody's interested. You know what I mean? We're just enjoying the sunshine. We made the sunshine. We called it in. If we want rain, we can always call that in too. You know, we can do that. Yes. We're powerful enough to do it. We'll just do some rain dances. It'll be fine.
Booyaka.
You know?
Booyaka,
so
weather shamanism,
you know,
is a thing, and we've even used it on retreat.
It is, like, whether we like it or not.
Say, right, we wanted to stop raining for half an hour, so we do the fire ceremony. Every time we did that on a retreat, it would stop for half an hour so we could go out and do the fire ceremony. And then at the time we'd agreed, it would start raining again and we'd all go back inside. So it's so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is the reality that we want to focus on, isn't it, really? And I think we can, but if we get dragged back into that old timeline, then of course it's very, very difficult to kind of wrest your way out of it. And, you know, this goes back for me for a long, 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 long way. You know, when I was in my 20s and I was really idealistic, and I was like, yeah, this is the way it's got to be. It's got to be plants, it's got to be natural healing, it's got to be organic food, it's got to be you know, clean water and all the rest of it. You know, I was so passionate about all of that, and I thought this is the future. You know, when I did my training in herbal medicine, I was like, this is the medicine of the future. I was really fired up about that. And then, you know, that was back in the I guess 80s, early 90s. And then over the last 3 decades, I've seen it go in what I've seen, or it appears to be, a very wrong direction. All the sort of expectation that I had that my vision would be the new earth, that it would manifest, seems to have been taken away. But I say seems because I'm kind of getting it back now, and I never let go of it. This is the thing. You know, I always felt that the world would follow my vision, but over the past few decades, I've seen it go the other way. But then maybe it had to. You know, they always said this would get a lot worse before it got better. And like we said so often about the mascots of mayhem and misrule, all of them, in a way, are there to make things more and more and more and more and more ridiculous until finally the scales fall from our eyes and we say, okay, got it. All right, you're out. And then we do start taking things on. That for me is, you know, very much the energy of the moment. And that's what I want to see happen, because all of this stuff is right. I know it's right. You know, I mean, I'm not saying if you want to be a Borg and you know, sort of, you know, hooked into AI and you want to be part of that reality, I think the opportunity is there for you to do that. I'm not saying it's the wrong for you to do. Go and do it with my blessing. I ain't joining you.
Yeah. I think all very good points, and you know, I'm totally on the same page as you. My idea of a new earth is a very organic, fractal one that is you know, an expansion of life, and I feel that as we move into the Aquarian age, there is also the very possibility of an alternative option there, which everyone is equally open to choose, and God bless them too if they go on that path. But it's like you, it's not the one that I'm choosing. I would much prefer to work with the inner technology that I've, you know, been talking about with you on other podcasts and indeed in other interviews as well. It's like the quantum technology is something that we can harness from our higher mind. Doesn't actually require anything else, any pieces of tech. We are the tech, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece that's been coming to me over the last year or so, is understanding that when I really reside in my higher mind with clarity in the astral planes, because I've done my homework and done my inner work and largely worked with most of my traumas and triggers, then it's much more easy for my higher self to communicate with me all the time and give me pieces of information, give me incredible ideas and downloads. And this is where being sovereign, being clean and clear, not accepting other narratives, but being with our own energy, being in the very present moment all the time, as Dandelion has been showing me, the more present you get, the more he can show you the integrated, interconnected nature of life, of the web of Wyrd. And the more you start to see it around you operating, Dandelion's like, okay, Can you see that now? I'm going to show you a bit more. And then he shows me a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And so then I start going back through timelines. I go out from the earthly realm, and then I start to see myself as a galactic being. And then it's just like, Dandelions, how much more do you want to see? Do you want to see how connected you are from a different time space into a different dimension into this one? I can show you all of that. All I require is for you to be present with me.
Totally. And I love, we are the tech. Again, you know, this is the real technology. I mean, I called it magic earlier, but it's the same thing.
Same thing.
And it is the web of Wyrd. That's what it is. It's where we get the real deal from, the real energy, the real ideas, the real creativity. That's where it comes from. And we're part of that. We don't need anything else. You're quite right. It's fun. We're doing this on our, you know, computers and wireless networks and God knows what. We're doing all of this. There will come a time when maybe we don't even have to do that. We'll do it telepathically. You know, I don't mind using these toys. I think they're quite nice. I bought a nice, you know, nice new Apple Mac a few years ago. It's still serving me very well. And it's kind of good to be enabled in that way. But I also feel there's got to be time away from that as well. There's got to be time to develop organically. This is what the, you know, the forest is all about, if you like. This is what going, you know, on your vision quests, on your, you know, off-grid periods, which is what I'm just about to do. You know, where we actually say, we're going to put that by for a moment, but I know I need that to sort of function day to day in the world, but there's something else that I need to develop in my life. And that might be in the forest, it might be in your own garden, it might be, you know, on the coast, on the seaside, on top of a hill, I don't know. But it's going to be in nature. And that is the thing, I think, that comes to me with all of this, is that it's the Pachamama who is really supporting us with our quest to be comfortable in life as we make these changes. And that's what harks back to something I said earlier about the, you know, worrying about water, worrying about energy bills, worrying about this and that and the other. At some stage, worry itself and anxiety is part of the old timeline. We don't need it. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help us. So let's dispense with that as well. And just like,
this is a very good point, Brian. I just want to pick up on it because, like, you know, what I'm understanding through the process of the immersion and Dandelion, but also my own journey over the last year and the last few years, is that we're at a moment longer to be in a place of reaction to what is going on. I think so often we feel as a population that we are in a place of reacting to what is given to us. And it's like, well, who's deciding what gets given to us? It's clearly not us, the masses. I feel this is a time to flip things and go, you know what? I get to decide, actually. I get to decide how is the weather, because if I work with my 5 good, open-hearted, awake friends, we can actually make the rain come onto our little piece of garden, just with intention, because actually the quantum nature is working with intention, and plants and nature and Mother Earth are super responsive to that. Super responsive. I mean, I've seen that time and again, as you will have done as well, working with the plants at the quantum level, is that when they're employed with that kind of full knowledge, they can do incredible work incredibly quickly because it's done with intention. And the same is true with weather. I mean, up in Tibet, man, some of the lamas are weather shamans, and they sit up in the mountains and they do their meditations and they work with the elemental beings, and they make it rain in the places where it needs to rain. And then when it doesn't need to rain, it doesn't rain.
And they don't need aluminium hydroxide to do it.
No, or a harp system somewhere in Alaska or any of those things. You know, so I want to many people, maybe in the old paradigm, this would sound completely woo-woo, completely whack chop, and we're just a couple of loons sat talking to each other on Zoom. But actually, when you really think into what is it to work with intention, what is it to work with magic, you realize that, first of all, the people in charge have been doing that to us forever, and that has to end because it's not serving us. And every time we go into a place of worry or anxiety, you're absolutely right. We're being anchored into the fear-based frequencies of the old timeline. And I just want to share something with the audience, because I know this is something we talked about, and I've had several conversations with some of my healer friends, that this last week, it seems as if many of us got targeted with these very, very low frequencies of anxiety and worry, deliberately trying to anchor us back onto that timeline. where things don't work out and we forget that we have the power. I had a few difficult days where I sort of got somewhat disconnected from my higher self due to, I think, some sort of frequency disruptor. I still haven't quite worked out how it was done or what was done, but from the accounts I've had from people like yourself and other similar friends doing similar work, it's like there's a repeated pattern has happened over the course of this last week. So I just want to put that out there to our audience. If any of you have suffered this week with those kinds of energies, or being pulled down, or feeling somewhat depressed, but also understanding that you didn't feel like that, that's something that's been going on for a bunch of people. So I always find that sharing is caring in these circumstances. And when you find out you weren't the only one that was going through that, you start to understand that there may be a bigger piece at work. So if any of our audience have had challenges like that this week, then you weren't alone in that. But it also makes me think that today was super, super important, and really, whatever remains of the opposing forces that are at work in the world that are perhaps trying to prevent the higher frequency new earth that many of us are calling in, it makes me think that they were very, very worried about today and what might happen if people like us and all of our audience listening were in a very nice, clear space where they could call in from their hearts this new earth frequency. So I kind of feel that this is, when we have difficult periods like this and the energy is very challenging, but we get through it, we come through it stronger, more in our hearts, more grounded, more rooted, more clear, more in our sovereignty, and more able to call in the beautiful visions that we have of new earth that for me certainly are about co-creation with Mother Earth and the plants.
Aho, brother. I echo that. Should we get into the plants?
Yes, well, I mean, I kind of think we've already been in the dandelion energy quite strongly.
We have.
The last 10, 15 minutes, I want to talk a bit more about dandelion and anything else that comes through. So what have you got to share, bro? What's on your mind?
Well, I mean, I'm dandelioned up to the eyeballs, and I'm loving it. The other day when things were really, really desperate, and I was thinking, oh my God, I've just completely lost the connection. I saw that I had actually put a bottle of dandelion essence on my bedside table, and it was just there. And I thought, oh my God, there's the answer. And I just kind of checked in with that. Gave myself a few drops, and it was pretty good. I mean, I have to say, it was almost instant. Okay, oh yeah, all right, yeah, fine, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I could, the creativity started to flow again in the situation I was in that I was completely stuck with. And some amazing ideas started to come through, actually, in terms of how I deal with certain things that are going on at the moment, rather than just shutting them down or, wishing people would go away or being having all of that sort of stuff. Actually thinking, okay, there's a need here. How do I address it? Okay, and that, I think, is a big part. I mean, I kind of see it in what we've been saying today. But dandelion, I think, for me, I remember being out on a film shoot, because I've done a few herb walks for the college I teach for, and we were in this on this estate in Sussex, and we'd found a few old friends. We'd found Horsetail, we'd found Nettle, we'd found I think it was wild garlic at the time as well, and I walked into this meadow, and it was about, I would say, about 4 or 5 acres in size, so a big one. And I suddenly realized that it was absolutely carpeted with golden flowers. It was dandelion all over. There was hardly anything else apart from grass, but it was all just dandelion. And I thought, it was like coming home. It's like, and I remember saying I was so overcome by this, and I had to squat down by a dandelion and talk about it, and talk about the liver and detoxing and all of that kind of stuff. And I just said, look, it seems to me, and look at this field, look at this color. You cannot be depressed when you see something like that. And for me, it's that eternal hope. It's that kind of the light that shines whether you're looking at it or not. And that's what it's representing for me right now. So all the stuff about the timelines, and we know that he is the Time Lord, the master geneticist, all of that comes in to the magic. But the real magic, I think, also is to lift our hearts and lift our spirits. And that's, I think, one of the real pieces of magic that dandelion has done for me personally these last couple of days, but in general for a long time.
Nice. I'm just getting the vision, the image of the whole field of the yellow flowers.
It was extraordinary.
Beautiful, man, beautiful. And again, I love the story you just shared there about the using the essence, because I've done the same repeatedly for months and months now. And often when I take the time to be really present and go, what do I need right now? Oh, I could do with some help, some direction here. Dandelion. Almost within seconds, like you, something comes and it just changes my changes my frequency, changes my vibration, changes my way of looking at things. And, you know, when we're being projected or bombarded with very low level frequency ideas, emotions, etc., pictures, then there can be a tendency to get pulled down into that and become quite negative, and you can end up in a negative spiral. And I always these days try to step away from that into a more non-dual mind and go, okay, let's look at solutions here. Let's be positive. So yeah, okay, something really unfortunate or bad is going on right now, or I'm feeling really crappy today, or I'm under some pretty heavy psychic duress from somewhere. I can feel like bad about that. I can go around moaning about it and making everyone else in that energy with me, or I can go, oh, hold on a second, this isn't serving me. And then that sort of mentality of victimhood isn't going to serve me either. Let me think about this differently. And I often feel that Dandelion, his real magic, and he has a lot, but it's the magic of the present moment. Be present with yourself and check in with yourself and see what's going on, and then break down why is this happening for me. And if you need to sit down and meditate on it, sit down and meditate. Dandelion for me certainly has slowed me up a lot, and kind of every time I start to feel a little bit bent out of shape or stressed about something, it's like, sit doin, dude, why are you stressed? There's no reason to be stressed. It's just you getting stressed for yourself. Nobody else is doing this, you're doing it. I'm like, okay. Every time I've done that and sat down, within, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but normally within 10 to 50 minutes max, I'm suddenly like, oh my gosh, like, why am I doing this to myself? And the answer comes like, good question, dude. Why are you doing this to yourself? Do you want to stop? This isn't serving you. And so, you know, whenever I have these moments that have come up, and this week especially, I've really had to employ this. And sometimes, sure, particularly in the energy of the moment we're in, there has been a lot of very challenging energies that have, I think, been unleashed on the planet to make many of us more high vibrational, new earth thinking people feel depressed or down, or that it's all not going to happen, or it's not worth it. And that was the motif. And I feel that for some reason, maybe collectively, many of us have gone through this week, but it's also interesting that how many of us burst through to a different place yesterday. And a bit like you, I was like, there's no way in hell that I'm going to be in a poor vibration on Monday, because it's just not what is needed. It's not what I need for myself. It's not what the collective needs. And so I took the responsibility on myself, working with Dandelion, to go, I need to be out of this kind of low frequency vibration as soon as possible, because this is not serving me or anyone around me.
Yeah, I did exactly the same thing, and it was amazing how it happened, actually. I am so ready for today. It's been amazing so far. I'm ahead of you a few hours, of course. I mean, you're just waking up, but we're kind of heading on to late afternoon here now. And looking forward to getting out to catch the last few rays, by the way, as well. But it has been an incredible day, and I think that I'm sensing, I don't know what the world out there is thinking, but within myself, a huge wave of optimism. And I really like what you said about the Dandelion being sort of pinning us down to the present moment. In point of fact, there is no other time.
Right.
The rest of the time is a complete illusion. There is only the now. And that's where we have the power to do whatever we need to, really. And I think that's big part of the magic here.
I agree. And I think that, for those of you who've been doing the immersion, but also those of us who've been working with Dandelion for a while, and I get emails from people all the time, because we talk about Dandelion quite a bit on this show, right? And have done for a while. And it's amazing how present Dandelion is for so many people. And I think that really he is here to dispel the illusions of the past, and to show us that the only thing that's really real is the present moment, and how are we living in the present moment. And I think that is one of the most profound questions you can ask yourself every second of every day, because it's an important one. And it's just like, what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Am I in a high vibration, positive mood to capture the energy of today, of the Lionsgate portal, or indeed any, positive astrological day, particularly the new moons? We just had a new moon in Leo, and many of us set intentions, and we're going to be heading to a full moon in Aquarius in a week or so's time, or in fact at the end of this week. And I kind of think it's very interesting when I think about the energy of Leo and Aquarius on that axis. I see that we're probably going to get a glimpse of the possibilities of the Aquarian Age, and the possibility that me and you have been talking about here today, and I would hope that many of our listeners would concur with, is that we want that kind of Aquarian New Age that is very grassroots, ground up isn't necessarily going back to some antiquated agrarian age. That's not the idea. I don't necessarily want to be, you know, reduced to you know, taking horse and cart to get down the road and get me apples and, you know, and bring them back. You know, that's all very lovely, and it's a beautiful kind of old English countryside image. But I think that the new earth that we're looking at is an amalgamation of the principles of these old ways of doing things, but with a higher mind technology that actually works much more co-creatively and in harmony with Earth for much more efficient energy systems. Nature is, from what I've seen, the most energetically efficient system you could possibly come across. And the more you look at it, the more you realize that. But, you know, like you, I love the idea of the wave of optimism. I certainly woke up this morning with that wave coursing through me. And you know, also whenever there's been a big period of challenge, and to get through it and realize that you're still in good shape, and if not in good shape, actually better than before the challenges, also gives you that extra burst. And one of the things I just want to share before we finish up for today about plants is that there is a wonderful herbalist out there called Susan Weed. I'm sure some of our listeners will have heard of her, and she's often shared this idea of a trinity, of a sort of holy trinity of plants, which is chickweed, mugwort, and motherwort, and that's in the sort of triple goddess spiral of maiden, mother, and crone. So in this case, chickweed is the maiden, mugwort is the mother, and motherwort is the crone. Which I think is really interesting. But one of my friends who I just recently did an interview with for the immersion, and I'm going to be doing some stuff for Web of Wyrd too, is my friend Emily Watt. And she suggested to me, she said, well, you know, I've come across this idea of the feminine triple sort of goddess with the plants, but is there a sort of a masculine version that we can work with to balance back out the harmonies and to really call that into the mixture for today as well? And I was just like, well, that's really interesting. Let me just think. And we talked about it a little bit. And what came out of it was a plant that we've been working with a lot and talking about, Horsetail, as the very, very ancient elder masculine energy. Then Nettle, which is also, you know, sometimes appears to me as feminine, but also has a very sort of masculine warrior, guardian kind of protector role as the father. And then our good old friend Dandelion, with his youthful exuberance and his sunshine energy, is kind of a bit like Mabon, maybe, of the illuminated brow in the Celtic traditions, is very sort of like crown chakra light, but also very childlike and innocent from that place of the heart. And so I'm just showing this because I think it's a wonderful idea, and maybe some of our listeners out there might have something they want to add to that. But I like the idea of having a triple god masculine plant trinity that we can also work with in this way, because these energies of Dandelion, Horsetail, and Nettle are all very important right now too. You know, the Horsetail gives us the strength and the armor plating to be able to deal with difficult situations. Nettle gives us the boundary so that we can be sovereign, and Dandelion gives us that innocence and that creativity and playfulness of the heart space, so that we can be in that heart space, but understanding that we're safe and secure and that we're not going to get threatened on our boundaries or in a sense of self.
It's a nice formula. I like it. The more you talk about it, the more convinced I am. But let's kind of let's sit with that for a while and see how that works out. I'd be very interested to see what people come back with on that one. I'm going to sit with that one for a while. And so I mean, I think we should just sit with that for a while and see how it turns out. Be really interesting to see what people come back with. I'm just going to sit with it, and but I really like it. I really like the idea, first of all, of the sort of trinity of masculine plants to match or consort with the feminine, but also those three plants which have been so meaningful. I think we've talked about them all actually in our Web of Wyrd podcast, but nice to see them sitting there. And I love it, kind of the idea, I like the idea of plants not using this word in a botanical sense, but it sort of having familial kind of ties with each other, you know, the father, the grandfather, the father, the son, or whatever, and that kind of idea. But also more than that, I like the idea of plants actually cooperating or collaborating with each other to help us. I mean, as a herbalist who practices as I've said before, by using a few different plants put into one remedy, I always have a kind of a vision of how those plants are going to work together and how they're going to feel about working together. It's a question I actually ask myself a lot these days when I put plants together. Is it okay with you guys to be put in like this? And the answer is usually yes. And I think they love to do it too, actually. So yeah, I'm really up for that. Yeah.
Good. And just as a final thought before we finish for today, I want to put this idea out there, because what you've just said is something that I'm starting to experience. And it's even through some of our own conversations, it's also got me thinking about this more, which is about how plants synergize with each other in your physical body, but also in your energetic body. I had a very interesting experience the first time I decided to take Horsetail and San Pedro together, which was a few weeks ago. The Horsetail went in a capsule form, and I'd say within about 5 minutes I started to feel a bit nauseous. I was just like, oh, I'm not sure, maybe the Horsetail and the Watruma haven't mixed so well in my stomach. And for about 30 seconds I felt a little bit sick, and I was just like, what's going on? And then I got a very, very clear message from both plants. It's okay, brother, we're just synergizing so that we can work together in your field. And then the nausea went, and for the rest of the day I felt absolutely bloody amazing. Yeah. And I was just like, wow, okay. And as somebody who's repeatedly worked with lots of medicines, even sometimes different entheogens at the same time, always in balance. There is definitely something about the quantity and balance, but we can be inner alchemists with plants. And, I had an interesting experience recently working with Istiwatl, the Estephiete or Mexican wormwood that I've talked about previously. And I asked in a clearing session whether she could help me with something which she previously hadn't been able to help me with, and she said, yeah, I can help you with that. And I'm like, okay, great. How though? You didn't know how to do this before. And what she told me says, I've been watching you do a yew tree, so I learned from him how to do it. And I'm like, what? Get out of here. And she's like, no. Well, what do you think's going on with all of your allies? We've been working with you for years now. We've all been working together in your clearing space, in your healing space, and we've all learned stuff from each other. Yeah. And then she was like, well, why do you think that wouldn't be happening?
Yeah.
Good and I'm question. Like, okay, actually, the more I think about it, of course that's going to happen. So it's like our own crew level each other up in the quantum space by working through us in this human realm, which I think is super cool. And the plants do too, for sure. Nice idea, nice thought.
Perfect.
So I'd like to leave our audience with the endless possibilities that when we engage, particularly with Mother Nature and plants, we can actually start to open ourselves up to all kinds of incredible technologies and magic, all of which can be manifested through us, the individual, without actually really needing any other beings, any other human beings certainly involved. And once we connect with the plants at the quantum level, we don't even really need to take them into our bodies. I mean, and I've been working with Dandelion all year, and I occasionally take the essence, but mostly I just have to put my attention to him and call him into my space. And then I just sit and I don't force anything, but then something manifests. So, this is the potentiality that we can all start to experience if that's what we choose for ourselves. And I think that is going to be a big part of my Lionsgate prayers for today.
Again, echo that. And I kind of want to say, that I feel like we're on a recruitment drive here today.
Busted.
Like, come join our timeline. Join our timeline. It's fantastic. It's got plants, it's got nature, it's got all this wonderful stuff. And I really do believe that, I can't think of anything better. So yeah, do it. All of this stuff is not difficult to do. And I totally agree with you about not necessarily needing to take the essence. I took the essence the other day. I found it was exactly the right way to focus myself. But if I'm out and about, maybe, just call in those energies. Once you start working with them, they'll readily come to your aid. So yeah, so much to look forward to for anybody out there who's thinking of coming down this path.
And if you're still sat a bit on the fence or not sure how any of this works, I would suggest that if you're not already working with Dandelion, really invite him into your space today, because this being is so powerful. I mean, he's blown me away this year. I've really come to understand that I'm dealing with a very, very profound being who has an incredible array of gifts and talents which he wants to share with us right now, and he wants to bring us into the present moment so we can experience our own magic. I think that's a really big piece of what he wants to share, and just by inviting him in, and yes, like you, I find the essence often focuses my intention or attention, and I often find that just a little bit of imbibing of medicine actually has that effect. But I can also do it with very, very clear thought. If I'm not getting distracted by email on my phone, and I just sit for a few minutes and I've got my anchor points with Dandelion, I just invite him in, and then there's a conversation going on. And I'm not particularly special in this regard. I think we can all do this, but Dandelion is a plant who can be very present for us and start to help us understand that there is a quantum world that we can access, not just with him, but with many other beings, many other plant beings. And yes, I think we are on a bit of an unofficial recruitment drive here, bro. We are telling people, you know, this is a newer frequency that we are both living in, and maybe the world around us is still not completely coherent with that, but certainly when we talk, we understand that we're on the same page, that we're on the same frequency, and that we have the same shared sort of understanding of the future. And I would really like invite our audience into a similar space for today, and, you know, for each and every one of you to call in whatever is in your heart. Don't be in any way bound or held back by other thoughts, other narratives, anything other than what is in your own heart. And I think that today is a day that we can give ourselves permission to really access that space and call in for ourselves the futures that we want. Why not? You know, that's what I say. Why can't we do that for ourselves? I think it's a very simple thing to do. And I think if we do it all collectively, then we can actually start to think about a different world with different types of leadership, different weather patterns, different ways of doing things that are much more heart-centered. So that's my prayer for today.
It's mine too.
Aho, brother.
I think,
so,
and again, for
yeah.
today, you know, you don't have to do it tomorrow if you don't want to, but do it today.
Do it today. And if you want to do it tomorrow too, and do it every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Call in what your heart desires. I think it's a perfectly acceptable thing to do every day. And it's not selfish, especially if what's in your heart is a beautiful thing, which I would hope is in all people's hearts. All you need to do is open that space and let it shine forth. And with the energy of Leo and Dandelion, I feel like we've got great vehicles to assist us with that. So as always, bro, for any new listeners to today's Weather Wyrd podcast, I don't think we're going to get banned. I think we've been good boys today and towed the line.
I think we have.
So
bit weird,
for anyone who's not, yeah, for sure. For anyone who's not heard before, please again share your website so people can find out more about your work, bro.
Oh yeah, www.thenaturalcentre.com. Centre with an RE, not the American way with the ER.
Good. And as I understand, you do have a fairly reasonable selection of some dandelion medicine as well, if any of our listeners
yes, we do. Yeah, we are sort of on the brink of going off grid for a few weeks, but a couple of weeks. But if you get in quickly, we might be able to send you some.
Good. So if anyone is thinking to call in dandelion into their life today, a very positive step would be to contact my brother and get some dandelion medicine. That's a very, very good way of harnessing in the 3D your magic of manifestation. So thank you for that, bro. And anyone who's interested in any of my work, please do check out quantumplанthealing.com. We are in the middle of a dandelion immersion, but starting on September the 13th, we will be going into a 13-day Artemisia immersion, which I think we're probably going to be talking about in future shows, and why that plant and why that time, or those plants rather, that clan. And please also feel free to check out other interesting podcasts and videos on wisdomhub.tv, or indeed on my YouTube channel, which is probably where you're seeing this right now. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, brother. Another great chat. Really enjoyed this one today and feeling super positive, super high vibe. And let's bring it, guys. Let's bring the new earth, and let's make it a beautiful place that we all want to share together. Aho. God bless everybody. Have a great day.